Graffiti, the music podcast that delivers the objective truth about the entire discography of every single artist and band that ever existed. I'm your host, Dave Gebrow, and if you're tuning in for the first time, ask yourself this. Do you think most modern discussions about music lack a certain fire and perspective? Also, are you kind of a crazy completist type son of a bitch like me? If the answer is yes and yes, welcome home. Please join our Facebook group, Discography Soldiers of Sound. We're on Instagram and Twitter too, but the Facebook group is home. Home of artists, writers, filmmakers, musicians, you name it. Overall, a melting pot of unbelievably talented sons of bitches. It's good times stretching for miles in every direction. My recommendation, if you like what you hear, is to join the group, then join up on the rest of the platforms too. Then, pretty please, rate the podcast 5 stars along with a beautifully worded review, especially if you're on Apple or Spotify. It'll help a lot. On whatever platform you do call home, you'll be privy to a never-ending flow of ongoing bonus content, giveaways, free swag, and encouraging words of wisdom on how to never, ever give up on your rock and roll dreams of maintaining a Lester Bangs-like perspective deep into adulthood. Don't forget, the link to our legendary playlist is in the show notes and also on our website at discography.com. This is an invaluable resource if, like me, you just hate listening to shitty songs. Lastly, but not leastly, a heartfelt Discography thanks goes out to Joe Cravino and to my wife, Jen, without whose invaluable help on the show, we would be entirely dead in the water. I seriously can't thank you enough. I care too much about this show to be entirely easy to deal with, so also, I'm sorry. Okay, back to business. First things first, you need to know just how seriously I take this craziness. Discography's heavily researched, and the music's always reassessed with fresh ears. I'm not just covering albums, I do a searingly honest deep dive analysis of all EPs, singles, comp tracks, relevant solo work, and bootlegs. Every release is slapped with an objectively accurate star rating between 0 and 5, which allows us all to come face to face with the true shape of an artist's overall arc. In this episode of Discography, we'll be turning our spray cans back on Big Star. The remnants of Beatle magic alchemized into the greatest, most sparkling power pop that ever was, turned the abyss that swung around and stared right back. And this is part 2. This is 1973 until present day. And we are back with Bart Bealmear from Dangerous Minds as our special guest. And last we checked in, Big Star had actually deteriorated, had broken up. Chris Bell had left the band. It's the beginning of 1973, and although there's intimations of a new record, everything is totally fucked up. So anyway, there are all kinds of crazy shit going on with the band. But after a few months, everybody except for Bell decided to reform Big Star. So the 3 of them resumed work on Radio City. And the title, again, is that same note of unerring optimism of number one record, which is like, our record's Radio City. And Hummel said calling an LP Radio City would be kind of wishful thinking. And of course, it didn't pan out that way.
Right. Yeah. So, they is it clear to you? Because I think they split up for a period in early 73. They were definitely on.
Yeah, they were done. And
they
just reformed without. Yeah, they reformed without him.
But they also really reformed for that really legendary now writers convention in Memphis.
Right. Tell me what was so impactful about that particular show.
So Arden brought in, they spent like this crazy amount of money flying in rock critics from all over the place, including Lester Bangs. I think Nick Tosches was there, Cameron, very young Cameron Crowe, and bought a tremendous amount of booze, got them all liquored up, and then Big Star hit the stage. And it was just like pandemonium. Like, I think Richard Meltzer was there too. So all the famous rock critics basically from that period. And they were all like dancing and having a good time. Like, people couldn't believe that, rock critics were dancing at a rock show. It was just almost unheard of. But everyone was just having this great time. And they went so crazy for Big Star that the guys kind of looked at each other and said, maybe we should give this another shot. Because I think they really just reunited. I'm not sure exactly, because I don't think they really decided to be a band again until after that. So maybe they still were just unsure if they were actually going to reunite,
right.
For anything more than just this show. So that was really the turning point, and where we kind of began, the Alex version of the band. So Big Star 2.0.
And although he's uncredited, Chris is still haunting the record. He's contributing "Oh My Soul," or he's contributed to the writing of some of it, including "Oh My Soul" in the back of a car.
Yeah, exactly.
And then shortly before Radio City came out, Andy did leave the band, thinking it wouldn't last, and it was his final year of college, and he decided to focus on studying and live a more normal life. He was replaced by John Lightman for a short while before the band dissolved. Tell me this, brother. Well, I mean, I know this one is in some ways, this is like the big one for you, right?
It is, yeah. It's the first one that I ever heard, so it's the first one I connected with and made me a fan. Is it the
most resonant one for you in a lot of ways?
I think it is. Also, I really connected with it in a lot of ways. It's very, lyrically honest. Of course, the songs are really catchy. It's a great rock and roll record. I don't know about you, but rock and roll is just a part of my DNA. I mean, it sounds cheesy, but I grew up on rock radio. So I've always latched on to great rock music, and Radio City definitely falls in that category. And I love the looseness of it.
Right.
"Oh My Soul" is if you only knew number one record at that point, it probably would be pretty jarring because it's a super loose song. Jody's drum fills are incredible. Again, they're almost like hooks. I always love whamp up, whamp up, whamp. I always love it. Yeah, it's great stuff.
Life is White, which, by the way, I've always loved that title. I don't quite know what it means, don't know what the intent is, but always liked it. I love Life is White. Love the harmonica touches.
Yeah. That's another. Like, that's the only time a harmonica appears in a Big Star song that I can think of. At times it has like a chugging, almost like a glam quality to it, but it's very dynamic with lots of interesting changes. I love that very Beatley middle section, with the piano solo. That's really great. Sort of a sudden left turn that you kind of would hear in a Beatles song.
It is a very Beatley song, and there's a very interesting lurching 4/4 thing to it. The feel of it, however they arrived at it, and Jody's playing seems perfectly suited. It's a great song. And then Hummel's contribution. Well, actually, Hummel was co-writer of Life is White, but Way Out West. But who'd have guessed it? His contribution's as good as anything else on the record.
Yeah, it's a great song, and Jody's first lead vocal on record. He also fine singer. Does a great job with the song. It's another an album full of great tracks. But that's another great one.
So what's going on is AHN, of course, like Jessica Hahn. This is a great song, and also the first indication. Even if you don't listen to the lyrics, of the dissolution of the sparkle motion perfection of the number one record vibe into waters that were far choppier and fraught with doubt, dissent, substance abuse, chaos. You can hear it all in the DNA of this song. So to me, it's the flagship tune on Radio City because the sonic imprints of both what came before and what comes after are here. So and you gotta love him yelling "Oh no, oh no" over and over and over again. It's just a phenomenal song. It sums up this record of the big question mark that hangs over fate itself. It's not my favorite song on the album, but it's the most perfectly representative.
Yeah, when I was listening to this in preparation for this podcast, it's a song, of course, I've heard thousands of times, probably, but I never really thought of it before as a potential song that could have been on Big Star's Third. It sort of has that sound a bit. It's sort of looking towards that sort of sound and arrangement, and it's one of the first of 3 songs on the album that are really not really Big Star songs at all, but the studio project that Alex had going on, I think, when they were kind of broken up is when he took it up, that they dubbed the Dolby Fuckers, which is
right.
Richard Roseborough on drums, who we haven't mentioned up this time, but it is very much a part of the Big Star story, and just he's definitely in that always around, and he plays on Third as well, and he plays drums on a lot of I'm the Cosmo songs.
Yeah, and he co-wrote Maud Lang.
That's right. Yeah, that's another Dolby Fucker song on Radio City. But yeah, it's interesting because Richard and Jody sort of have similar styles, but not really. Like Richard's kind of more of a harder hitter. He doesn't quite do the fills that Jody does. So if you're listening closely, you can kind of tell it's not Jody.
You get what you deserve. Gotta be honest, I was never much of a fan of this song. I know this is going to raise hackles. I always skipped it. It's a bummer because it's a decent enough song, but Radio City to me is not about decent songs. I believe it's a lame end to the album side. Sorry.
I think it's
relative. It's all relative.
I think it's a good spot maybe for it. I think I know what you mean. Like whenever I think of this song, I think I'm not a huge fan of it, so I'm kind of with you.
I never was into it. It never got me.
I really like the middle section of the Too Bad, Such a Drag. Ow! So much pain down the drain. A lot of us ain't got no plans. I really like those lyrics.
I do agree with you. I do like that. But when it kicks in, it feels almost like a song that you would change the station if you heard it on the radio.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah, and I do love Alex's guitar playing on that one, and the sparkly tone of his guitar on that one. Like it's one of the more produced and maybe similar sounding to the number one record as far as a guitar sound. But yeah, maybe they were trying to overcompensate with the production because the song really isn't as good as most of the other songs. So I get what you're saying.
Maud Lang. So we kick off with a solid cock rock boogie kind of thing. Kind of sounds like an ardent twist on Grand Funk or something. And it's better than I'm making it sound. But it's not that much better than I'm making it sound.
It's funny. Alex later admitted he stole the lyrics from bunch of different blues songs, so he might have even thought of it as a throwaway.
I just got a great album idea. You take an old blues guy and just have him do unattributed covers of original Led Zeppelin songs.
Nice.
All right, so Back of a Car. All of a sudden, boom, we are back on Terra Firma. What an incredible song. I mean, this song could have been on fucking Abbey Road. And I'm not even being hyperbolic.
Yeah, it's a really euphoric kind of song. I think of it kind of as the sister song of In the Street. And the vocal even sounds a bit like Chris. So I imagine he must have at least sang a guide vocal or something for this at some point. Or, when they were rehearsing.
Written by Chilton and Hummel.
Yeah, you know why? Because Chris refused any writing credit. He wanted nothing to do with any credit on Radio City. But he did play a role, as you said earlier. He did play a role in writing the song. But yeah, more great fills from Jody here. Another great lyrics. Yeah.
The next one is probably my favorite song by the band. It's probably my favorite of theirs. Daisy Glaze has always been, a phenomenally moving song, and it's what can you say when you get a song in 2 movements, and both of the movements are equally powerful as the other. So it seems to, at least musically, describe their disillusionment, and then with 3 whacks of the skins, at least. It feels to me like it's detailing a refusal to give up no matter what. That's the vibe that I pick up, but only musically. You hear the drag, then you hear the, fuck this, we're not going down with that. This is me reading into it over the course of 30 years.
No, I love that, but yeah, it's you kind of get two songs for the price of one in this one, and
Yeah.
I also love that
And then,
that sort of ending that doesn't quite, it's not quite together, kind of they're not quite
yeah.
together on that ending. Yeah,
And then you're going to die, you're going to decease. I mean,
yeah.
the power of the lyrics. The song is perfect. Doesn't quite squeak through into top shelf classic territory, but it's a good tune regardless.
Yeah, it's sort of a anomaly. I mean, I guess there's a few anomalies on this record, maybe, but it's the last of the Dolby Fuckers tracks on here. Though Andy overdubbed a bass part, so he's playing bass on the final version. But this one always struck me as really British Invasion sounding. I mean, that's talked about a lot with Big Star as far as their influences, that they were inspired by British Invasion bands, and of course the Beatles. We've talked about the Beatles influence, but this one just seems to have a more like, you can't quite pick out what band they're trying
From
to.
the title down.
Yeah, it does seem like a mid-60s title too. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Like a Doug Somm kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah, she's about to move her, right, and
Yeah.
it has some strange like percussion like going on in it. But I always love that line when she smiled like crocodiles. I think that's a
That's awesome.
fantastic.
That is great. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so September Girls. The question here is, how perfect is this song? And the answer is 100%.
Yep. Six stars.
Yeah, it is just absolutely perfect. Obviously named after California Girls. This was released as a single. There's no God, obviously, because it didn't go anywhere. Roundly considered one of the greatest songs of all time, and actually one of the big things that wound up happening to provide a resurgence for the band was the Bangles cover of this song.
And the first time Alex ever made any money off of Big Star.
Right, exactly. So Morpha 2 is next.
Oh, we're not going to talk more about September Girls? I love that song.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I'm sorry.
No, I think you're right, though, just to assume everybody already knows this song. But I mean, it's such a beautiful track. The chiming guitars, I mean, you got to love a pop song with an amazing, middle eight with, it starts with, when I get to bed late at night. And then that drum break, Jesus Christ, coming out of the guitar solo. I mean, it's just so amazing. And the I loved you, well, never mind, that lyric is
right.
Incredible.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, this is perhaps, Alex's greatest song, and yet certainly one of the greatest rock songs of all time.
I just want to say also that sometimes I feel like I take it for granted.
Yeah.
Like it's so simple and so iconic and so all-encompassing in terms of describing a feeling or conveying a feeling that I don't even see it for how amazing it is. But it really is just an absolute ray of sunlight. So Morpha 2 kind of doesn't count and probably would have fit better on third.
Yes. Yes, I always thought of this as a third sounding track.
But at the very least, this should have been the final song on side one, so you don't have such a traffic jam of tiny songs concluding the LP.
Yeah, the sequencing gets weird here because I think they did intend for September Girls to be the last song, but the album was a bit short. So they put these songs on the end, but why they chose to put them on the end and not somewhere else is something that I have no knowledge of.
The last song of the side on many, many mixtapes I've made for girlfriends over the years who simply weren't lucky enough to wed me was this song due to its brevity and overwhelming sweetness. It's a great song. And it's one of the greatest and simplest love songs of all time. Yeah,
it's an uncharacteristically sweet song for Alex too. I think of this kind of as a cousin of 13. It's very straightforward. But I wonder if it's in part it's so short because Alex couldn't stand to be that sweet for that long.
That is the perfect summation of that song. So this is a crucial record for the band, seeing as it combines elements of abject optimism from the first one and dissonant despair from the third. So doing this trawl, it became quite apparent to me just for me that this is their least essential record, if you can actually call any of their records inessential, which you can't. There are a ton of good songs on the record, and the vibe is a very interesting combination of everything that they do. But the problem for me, if you can call it a problem, because really this is totally nitpicking, is in the very middle of the record, you get a couple of songs that feel like Grand Funk Boogie and just get in the way of this album being a masterclass in what Big Star do best. Incredible pop songs that have an affinity for breaking your heart. So what I'm talking about is like the You Get What You Deserve, Maud Lang, which I don't dislike, but those two songs in a row, it's the only thing pacing-wise on any of their records that's a little bit wonky to me. So I give it 4 3/4 stars.
Okay. I see what you're saying with that, but I still, it's sort of hard to be, objective fully,
Sure.
But, I guess I always, if I try to think of those songs objectively, and now I think I'm a little more critical of them, thanks to you, Dave. But maybe for good reason, because they aren't as good as the other songs in the album. But I also thought it helps maybe mix up the record a little bit. But I can't help it, 5 stars.
Just as number one record had fallen victim to poor marketing, so too with Radio City. So Columbia, who now is in complete control of the Stax catalog, refused to deal with it. There was a disagreement, and they just let it hang. So without a distributor, sales of Radio City, although they were greater than number one record, were minimal at only around 20,000 copies. You probably have a different figure on hand.
It's a lot less than that. But
what do you have?
I mean, still, I think it was less than 5,000 at the time.
Whatever it was not enough.
No, it was not enough. And it was sort of the same thing all over again. And Columbia just wasn't interested in anything but the Stax stuff. So they just,
right.
They didn't promote it. So yeah.
So here we are again, and these guys are like, what the fuck? I mean, because not only are they putting their all into it, but it's you can't possibly make an argument for the idea that it's not great. So 1974, we're just going to have a mention here because we don't really go in depth on live albums unless they're epoch changing or epoch defining. But live on WLIR, recorded in 74, direct to 2-track at Ultrasonic Studios in New York for the radio station WLIR, and released in 92. Then it was reissued in 2019 under the title Live on WLIR on Omnivore Records. There's only one thing that I want to mention on this, and it'll be on the playlist, but Motel Blues, the version on this record, is indispensable. It's one of the most crucial songs from the band, even though it's a cover of a Loudon Wainwright song. They own it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible performance by Alex. It's during a segment where he's just playing an acoustics, like a 4-song set.
This is a particularly thin live recording that I never much cottoned to. I even had this way back in the day. And
I did too, yeah. I mean, I had it when Ryko put it out, but it had been widely bootlegged before that. I never heard the bootleg.
They're a studio band. I never listened to this one. But there is one great takeaway. In mid-show, there's an interview, and whoever it is says, you're getting an awful lot of critical acclaim for your new album. It's really good. And he said, and Chilton says, yeah, that's nice. I hope it sells. We've had critical acclaim before, but no money. It's so funny how upfront he is about it.
Yeah. Yeah, and the completely dry, Alex.
I will say, I give this record 3.5 stars.
Get out of here! You're not rating this, are you?
No, it doesn't really deserve it. I'm retracting that rating. Okay, retracting. All right, so I do want to mention though that Andy Hummel is gone. Yes. John Lightman is playing bass on this,
and he'd only been with him a few weeks when they made this recording.
Oh, is that so?
Yeah.
After the first 2 records tanked, Alex Chilton and Jody Stevens come back to Ardent in late 1974, accompanied by what Bruce Eaton, their biographer, describes as a large and revolving cast of Memphis musicians. to record under Jim Dickinson a batch of starkly personal, often experimental, and by turns beautiful and haunting songs that were anything but straight up power pop. John Fry recalls that the sessions they had were burdened by severe personal issues. Eaton tells how John Fry finally called a halt to the escalating madness, and the album was mastered by Larry Nix on February 13th, 1975. So different opinions exist regarding the categorization of Third/Sister Lovers as a Big Star album. According to Chilton, Jody and I were hanging together as a unit still, but we didn't see it as a Big Star record. We never saw it as a Big Star record. That was a marketing decision when the record was sold in whatever year that was sold. And they didn't ask me anything about it, and they never have asked me anything about it. Jody Stevens said, I've seen it in different ways. To a great extent, it is an Alex solo record. It's Alex's focus. It's his emotional state of being, but I brought in the string section for the one song I wrote, and Alex hit it off with Carl Marsh and started using Carl in the string section for other things. What would that album have been like if it didn't have the strings? According to Eaton, the mastering card identifies Chilton as the recording artist. What do you think, Bart?
Yeah, I mean, Alex has said that they had never really decided on a name, but that they definitely were not going to call it Big Star. Yeah, I mean, there's just there's so much to it.
They were going into the studio and dicking around, right? I mean, it was not necessarily Big Star Album 3.
Yeah, it was. They just basically called it the Alex and Jody project. In fact, on the master tape for it, on the spine, it just says Alex and Jody. In fact, there's a the test pressing that they did for it, that they shopped around to labels, which we'll talk more about that I guess in a bit. But it just says Alex and Jody on the spine, and then on the front it says Big Star's Third. But it's unclear to me like when somebody wrote that on the front of the box, for the master. It could have been years later.
I mean, look, the fog around this is part of the draw because
there's a lot of fog here.
Yeah, by all accounts, this is a Quaalude enshrouded record. Phase 3, Holocaust, 1974 to 75. So in fall of 74, Third/Sister Lovers is recorded. The initial release, correct me if I'm wrong, Bart, March 1978.
I know it came out in 78 was the first release.
Okay. So sessions kicked off at Ardent in September 74. And although Ardent created promotional white label test pressings for the record in 75, there were financial issues. The record was really uncommercial, and a lack of interest from Chilton and Jody in continuing the project prevented it from ever being finished or released at the time.
Was there a lack of interest on? I don't remember actually hearing that. I mean, I know, like you said, Fry put an end to the sessions once it got completely out of hand, where they were bringing in homeless guys to sing, lead vocals and stuff. And he just,
is that what was happening?
Yeah. It got really crazy. It was taken away from Alex, really. He was Jim Dickinson, the producer, basically cut Alex off from the project. And I mean, who knows why? It could have been for very good reasons, because Alex was completely out of his head at that point.
I don't know, but what's strange about that, dude? What lays waste to that whole vibe is that incredible box. And I don't always, a lot of these reissues are really just trying to, squeeze blood from a stone and just grab as much dough as possible from people. But Complete Third is really interesting because the notion of this record, the accepted backstory, is that Chilton was out of his mind and, completely nuts. He came in there with a very strong, clear game plan. Those demos make it very clear he knew what he wanted.
Well, he was cognizant enough to realize that he wanted to capture on tape what was kind of going on in his world and in his mind. I mean, that's what's so incredible. Right. Let's just really get to what this record is. I mean, it's an incredible document of someone's, decaying mental state, decaying relationships, decaying, fading, professional, career, music career. There's just a lot of dissolution here and disillusionment, with everything. And he realized he wanted to capture that, and Dickinson really helped him do that.
And I want to say, as far as the final masters go, that to me this is less a Big Star album than very easily the greatest Alex Chilton solo album ever made.
I love you said that, because in some ways it's regrettable in some ways that it is considered a Big Star album at all, because it really isn't. It's an Alex album, but it's certainly more famous as being this, unreleased, unfinished, Big Star album.
Look, I'm saying this to you, but at the same time, I consider it a Big Star record. Yet I do not like Chilton solo. I believe that willful negation is too strong in his work. And so it's kind of like the same thing of, if I go into a restaurant and I sit down and the waiter comes over and tells me how shitty the food is and how crappy the service you're about to get is, I'm not going to stick around for the meal.
Right.
So what happened here? So Arden shopped the tapes. And actually, like, everything was, the packaging was apparently loaded with exclamation points. When it's like when what you're selling is not exciting enough, so you overdo it with exclamation points, and all it does is reinforce the notion of despair. Finally, after hitting the pavement for a long time, a small indie named PVC released the record in 1978. So it was released by Aura Records in London as well. And then later in the year came the PVC release. So one of the interesting things about the varied releases of Third and Sister Lovers is that there's no definitive releases because it was left unfinished. My favorite album of all time is the Beach Boys' Smile. It's a similar type of thing. There's, the band had never agreed upon a definitive version. The title even, the running order, the cover art, it's all up in the air. And then there's original songs that were variously included or omitted. You have the Kinks' Till the End of the Day, Nature Boy, and Jerry Lee Lewis's Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. So the 1992 CD release on Ryko, which was assembled with Jim Dickinson's involvement, that's where I came on board. That's the one I'm familiar with.
Yeah,
and so
same here. That's the first one when I really fell for the record was when that was reissued, because I'd heard it before, but I don't think I was quite ready for it.
Right. See, I never had, but I regard this as kind of the ultimate version because it's the one I'm familiar with. But the one that I'm going to go off, just because I used Complete Third as the template for this trawl, so I'll just use that. I'll just use that running order. But Complete Third is amazing. Not every box set is a homer, but it's every demo, rough mix, outtake, alternate take, and final master from the Third sessions that are known to exist.
Well, let's talk about that order for a second, because they tried to, what they did was the first 14 songs mirror the test pressing that they shopped around. So the thinking was that was the closest. That version that they shopped around could have been released in that order at the time, and then they just tacked on the remaining songs from that were mastered and have come out on various releases since then. I mean,
you're saying the Ardent test pressing?
Yeah, the 1975 Ardent test pressing.
Yeah. So that kicks off with Stroke It Noel. Then you have Downs, Femme Fatale, Thank You Friends, Holocaust, Jesus Christ, Blue Moon. That's side one. Then Kiss Me, Sometimes, which is the working title of For You. Odana, Nighttime, Whole Lot of Shaking Going On, Kangaroo, Take Care.
Yeah. And
that's reasonable.
Yeah, Take Care is a great closer.
It's a perfect closer, yeah.
What I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping ahead at all, but I cannot believe that Big Black Car and You Can't Have Me were not included on the original record.
Yeah, that's great. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible to me that they did not include those songs on that pressing.
A lot of box sets, I think, just by nature of just the money squeeze thing, are just totally inessential. Complete Third really does paint a really vivid picture, and is, as a big Star fan, it is very essential. The first volume, the first disc is demos to sessions to roughs. There's nothing I'm going to put on the playlist from this. It's just good to have. So volume 2, the second disc, is roughs to mixes. There is something from that I do want to pull. The version of Lovely Day, the Fry rough mix, is a very sunny modulation of what landed on third that I think is worthy of being isolated. You know what I'm talking about? It's got it's obviously way too upbeat for what wound up on the record, but it's pretty great.
Cool. Yeah, I didn't revisit the entire box before this, but we should say that's an early version of Stroke It Noel, the Lovely Day.
Right. All right, so let's go through the track listing here, because we have an absolutely repulsively insane grouping of great songs. We start things off with, again, the mirror of the 1975 Ardent test pressing. Their first song was Stroke It Noel, and it's an incredible sing-song melody with tons of production space and a lot of upper crust rarefied air inhabiting this one. A very tasty string chart that elevates the tune to top tier status. It's just a great song. Okay, well, the second song, it's definitely starting to smell like Quaaludes in here now, and the shambolic frolic begins. So Downs, which is less a song than an atmosphere setter, and boy, does it.
Absolutely, yeah. This is like a really wobbly track. Again, has that meta quality that sometimes these big Star songs do, but this one especially. Alex is like slurring his voices. And you're just assuming that he actually is like high when he did the vocal.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that he's probably high through the whole thing, but
yeah.
Yeah, this is like his Got to Get You Into My Life about Quaaludes.
this one too is like, there's a funny story behind this, because this is the song that convinced John Fry to give Alex, the go ahead to start the sessions for this album.
What?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but get this. So John Fry thought the song had pop potential in the demo form, and he made the mistake of saying that within earshot of Alex. So Alex proceeded to completely sabotage it. The snare drum is a basketball.
Yeah, that I remember.
And those
I remember. In fact, I remember reading about that in Rolling Stone and thinking, I should check this band out.
That's great. But yeah, those steel drums really keep things off kilter. And it does really point towards Chilton's like the Ramshackle solo recordings that he would do. It sounds more like that stuff than anything else here. So it's also weird to have this song placed so early in the album when you're, trying to sell it to record companies.
Oh yeah,
it's a bizarre second track.
Then we have Femme Fatale, which is a Quaalude dissemblage of the classic VU tune, with the full French psycho killer-esque Elle est une femme fatale. A great song.
Yeah,
definitely.
One of the earliest VU covers for sure, at least a high-profile one. I mean, relatively high-profile.
Yeah, and I want to say this is an essential song for the record, but track listing-wise, I really hate, till the end of the day, Nature Boy, whole lot of shaking going on. Never a fan of those.
Okay, I mean, yeah, we'll get to those. But,
we'll get there, but I just want to say, this is the cover that belongs here, I think.
It does, yeah. The arrangement is totally suited for the record. Like, it fits well. And has somehow Alex convinced Steve Cropper of Booker T and the MGs to play the guitar on it, and so it's got that too.
Also, of all the songs to ask him to be on,
I know, it's really wild.
Thank You, Friends. Always thought this should have been an opener. Always liked it.
Would have been a great opener, yeah.
Yeah, I always liked it more than Kiss Me.
It works as a closer too. Even though Take Care is a great closer, it could work as a closer.
Take Care is too good, yeah. So it's a kind of a snide, sarcastic rocker.
But see, is it though? I think it's still debated this day if Alex was being sarcastic or not.
I think there's a 1,000% chance he only intended it sarcastically.
Yeah,
I think he was.
I think so.
I think it was a fuck you, basically.
I just don't think it's evident in the performance. I think it's a very straight ahead performance. Right. But also one of the really interesting things here is the influence of Yoko Ono on this record, which this is the first place we hear it. On the very end of the song, there's some very full-on Yoko impressions like going on that you can detect more in different mixes on here. But
it's not something I'd even thought about, and I didn't know it was a blatant influence.
Yeah, go back to even listen to some of those rough mixes because there's one of them in particular where he's totally doing Yoko at the end of the song, and so are the background singers. So it's interesting.
Wow.
And then Holocaust, of course, I think he did a subconscious lift of the song Mrs. Lennon by Yoko.
Well, you know what the song was originally called?
Your Mother's Dead?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, I mean, Lennon had a song called My Mommy's Dead.
That's true. So yeah, that's almost like a bit of a pastiche, I guess. But I mean, this is the most atmospheric of all the third tracks, and I mean, Haunting doesn't begin to describe the song.
Well, so there's the two songs that are pure unadulterated bleakness: Holocaust and Big Black Car.
Yeah.
So the album gets its rep as a terrific album to slit your wrist to because of those two songs. I always preferred Big Black Car.
Yeah.
Holocaust is more just like, I think it's less of a great song than Big Black Car and more of just a very, very strong vibe.
I would agree. It's a hard song to listen to.
Yeah.
It's a devastating song and it's spooky. It's a weird song. Just the recording of it, the production is so strange. And I, often find myself skipping it because it is such a hard song.
Yeah. And you know what? I never skip Big Black Car.
No, never. I love Big Black Car so much. I'm glad you do too. So,
yeah.
But yeah, we'll get to that.
But there's a melodic underpinning that carries you through the song and helps you through some of the despair. Not that he's looking for that buffer, but that's what it does.
Well, yeah. I mean, we could talk about Big Black Car for a second, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, the song too. To me, I just love the metaphor of that. The idea of protecting yourself, and that you are surrounding yourself with walls, or in this case, car doors, or whatever you want to call it. But so also, I think this is Big Black Car too is kind of the ultimate song as far as an arrangement, because they actually incorporate silence into the arrangement of the song. So, Jesus Christ, another classic tunes, one of the best on the album. I think had this been on either of the first two records, the tape would have unquestionably been saturated with beatific John Fry overdubs. But as it stands, there's so much space here. It's so beautiful, perfection. And I'm Jewish, so I'm for real on this. Yeah, and I'm one of those people that says I was raised Catholic, but not practicing. But yeah, Alex writes a really good Christmas song here. Like it's
a really good, it's really good.
And it's so weird because it both doesn't fit in the record and fits just fine. Also, coming after Holocaust, you really need something lighter after. So that's a nice bit of sequencing there.
Totally. Yeah. And then Blue Moon is chamber pop gorgeosity. I mean, it kind of reminds me of that plaintive, totally inoffensive Vivaldi Four Season kind of a vibe.
It sounds like a standard to me. Like sometimes I often find myself looking at the credits to see who wrote it because it sounds like an older song. But yeah, it's really lovely.
Why should I love Kissimmee when I've always only liked it?
It's a solid rocker. Yeah.
I hate that the bass sounds like farting. It just doesn't have it doesn't have the same kind of punch to me that a lot of their rockers do, and so I always hated that it kicked off the Ryko re-release.
I agree. It's not really a great opener, but it does open the album on some other editions, not just the Ryko version. So somebody thought it was a good opener, but or more than one person did. But
you like with the Ryko version, you take Kiss of Me, okay, and you slide it down. So you start with Thank You Friends, then Big Black Car, Jesus Christ, Everything's Perfect, and then after For You, you put Kiss of Me, then You Can't Have Me, which continues the mood, and then goes into Nighttime.
That's cool.
I think that's
for all the thought or all the talk about there never being really a true sequence, which, by the way, I think sort of adds to the mythology of this record because it sort of preserves it in this state of permanent chaos because there's never...
Not only that, but if you love the record, there's a proprietary thing about it that is perfect for a music geek. Okay, so then For You, we already talked about Kiss of Me. For You is the Jody Stevens song, and it's as good as all the rest of the Chilton material. I'll tell you, for a guy who threw about a song per album on the record, he was a really good songwriter.
I mean, not bad for a drummer, right? It really is a lovely song. His vocal performance is great on it. And we, like you said, we owe him for bringing in the strings. And again, that's can't imagine those songs without strings.
The strings, what a terrific choice for this record, to bring some stately grandeur to the proceedings when the proceedings are basically everything falling to pieces is a very wise decision because the counterpoint is very strong.
And they sound great, so you can't really argue with not having them on there. So Dana's next. I'll just take the reins here, Dave.
Please. Man.
Dana's next. I love the opening line, the opening line is certainly interesting. I'd rather shoot a woman than a man. It's kind of intense. But and I do like the song, but maybe I'd lump it even with Kiss of Me, where it's not one of the best songs in the album, but it's still good. I still like it. It totally fits with the album. It's just a lot of times when I think about that album, that song doesn't really come to mind. But
true, I agree. I want to point out the gorgeous string breakdown ending. Nighttime, for a very long time, this has been my favorite song on the record. Both the best and most affecting melody, and the most barren and depressed tune. This song is a balance, whereas most of the rest of the album is either melodically gorgeous or chaotically broken down, but not equal amounts of each. You don't get more straightforward in lyric writing than "Get me out of here, get me out of here. I hate it here. Get me out of here." You know what line always put me in his shoes, unerringly, is "Walking down a freezing street, scarf goes out behind me." Something about that line, I'm there with him. And then "A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On" is literally the definition of inessential.
Shout out to my wife here who loves Big Star and hates this recording.
You married a fine woman.
I did indeed. Yeah. But I still enjoy that recording. Because it's so chaotic that to me it fits with the record. So there's that, but I totally...
My favorite chaos on this record is the chaos of space. So toward that end, let's go to the next song, Kangaroo. This one has so much empty space. The intensity surrounds you, but the ballad, the melody, like the affecting grandeur of the whole thing, it comes straight to the fore because of all this space. I
mean, an album full of strange arrangements. This is perhaps the strangest one, maybe along with Big Black Car. The instruments played at odd rhythms, yet there's still like a standard song arrangement. So that's part of the beauty and weirdness of the record is that it's a song that has like an arrangement or a flow of what you would say like a normal song, but the arrangement is just so wild, but it still all holds together by the basic structure of the song, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense to a douche like me.
Well, we're douches together then, I guess. But,
That's right.
So yeah, Dickinson came up with that Mellotron part and that incredible guitar feedback. After being
okay, yeah, that piece of feedback is the most essential part of the song.
Yeah, and that was all after being challenged by Chilton to come up with something. He was like, "You're the producer, be a producer, produce something." So that's So Chilton,
that's cool.
Chilton was duly impressed by that stuff.
Yeah, as well he should have been. It really frames what he's going for in a very resounding way. Kangaroo is a great song, and then Take Care is one of the best songs on the album. So heartbreaking in its stripped bare production circumstance, and the melody and lyrics are just raw to the bone.
And again, the strings. Can you imagine that song with no strings?
No. Also, the thing that just kind of drives me nuts. Maybe you have an answer for this. Who is Chilton singing this to? So, it could be anyone or anything, but in any sense, some of these lyrics, this sounds a bit like goodbye in a way it is, I guess. As I leave your side, I've taken the air. What a great lyric. As I leave your side, I've taken the air. Also, like I said before, beware of the need for help. Some really strange left hooks that really take you by surprise.
I think it's part of what makes it great and universal is that's hard to really know who he's singing to. He could even be singing to himself, Yeah. So yeah, it's an incredible. I mean, there's so much melancholy in that song.
So we talked about Big Black Car, and then Dream Lover. A solid atmospheric contribution, but melodically and emotionally not quite on the same level as the rest of the Stone Cold classics on the record.
I feel like emotionally it does get me, but yeah, it's definitely a sparse and weird one. The arrangement for it wasn't actually planned out before the recording took place, which is another strange thing about not only this recording, about the album in general, but just the specific recording where they didn't actually plan it, so it's being arranged on the fly, which is pretty bizarre. At times this one actually reminded me. We've never talked. You and I haven't talked about Scott Walker before, but it sort of brought to mind like the Night Flights era of Scott Walker. It had that sort of sound to it to me at times, which I hadn't noticed before.
That's an interesting piece to pick up on. I don't know about Chilton's predilection for Walker.
I don't know that either. I mean, Night Flights came several years later, so it'd be interesting to know if Scott Walker heard this album, because you're
talking about the other way around.
Yeah, because Night Flights is from '78, and Third came out in '78, so maybe he did hear it and it was influenced by it. Who knows? I've never heard Scott Walker talk about Chilton or Big Star, but
the funniest thing about that record is the dichotomy between Scott's songs and the rest of the guys.
It is.
The other guys' songs are so fucking bad. You Can't Have Me. That is a really good classic Stones and Who style, retributively acerbic rock classic that is really both stands as an ultimate fuck you to his audience and every record company and production company that ever performed a Ned Beatty deliverance on his butthole. The lyrics kind of don't even make any sense. It's just that phrase repeated over and over again. And there, described in those words, is the remainder of his crap solo career.
Well, I'm just going to jump to saying that I love the song so much. I again can't believe it wasn't included on the test pressing, but it was on the first PPC release. It is on that, so they had at least that label had the good sense to put it on there as they did Big Black Car. That synth bass fucking rules. I love that so much. And the middle section is incredible. Like it's
talking about the farts.
Yes, the farts. Yes, I think I love it though. And it's like the middle section is like perfectly controlled chaos, and then it just stops on a dime.
I love that. I love that part.
That middle section might be my favorite moment of the entire record. I love how it just sounds like it's about to go completely off the rails and then just stops.
Yep. And then you got Lovely Day, which is that's one of the best. But it's a stroke at Noel, right? It's an early stroke at Noel.
Yeah.
It's.
I'm a little perplexed as why they put this on. Omnivore put this on here. Why it was chosen, because it really is just stroke at Noel with different lyrics. Maybe just to add something to it, so it wouldn't be the exact same order or the amount of tracks as the Ryko version. So yeah, I feel like this is the least essential piece on Complete.
Yeah, for that reason, I do like the Fry rough mix though.
I'll have to go back and listen to that because
that's very, very pretty. So what comes, like we talked about before, what comes across in the box that isn't otherwise communicated to the average listener is the composed chaos at work in the sessions. The demos on disc 1 sound incredibly similar to the locked final versions on disc 3. So it's a very interesting peek into the mind's eye of the Chilton Man. This is always going to be a great record, although it's not the first album I reach for when I choose to listen to Big Star, but it's always there, and it always beckons, and it's always 5 stars.
Absolutely. You wonderfully said. I would give it 5 stars as well. I just can't help but say that we skipped a couple tracks.
Did we? What did we skip?
Well, we skipped till the end of the day the Kick-Ass Kinks cover.
I did that on purpose.
Oh, okay. I thought we were just going through all the complete.
No, I did that on purpose only because I was like, I don't feel like saying this is a relatively worthless rock and roll workout and not really part of the record.
Well, then what about Nature Boy? Because I think that's that
actually I shouldn't have skipped.
Yeah, I think that's essential. I mean, that's a cover of the standard Nature Boy, and it's the most sparse of all the third recordings. It's essentially.
It also feels like a fit for the record. It does.
It does, and it's essentially just William Eggleston who did the photography for Radio City, that album cover he did, and he's famous, photographer from Memphis, and it's just he and Alex. So Eggleston's playing the piano. And there's some other music maybe mixed in the background that sounds kind of weird that I'm not sure what they're doing. But during the final verse, so Eggleston was on crutches and he had them leaned against the piano. And during the final verse, one of the crutches falls and crashes to the ground. And you can actually hear Alex grinning as he's singing the last couple lines. And I mean, it's a kind of a perfect, that happy accident is kind of a perfect end to a chaotic record. So it is a nice end to the complete third.
What do you give this?
I give it 5 stars. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because I've enjoyed being friends with you, and I wanted to continue. All right. So one addendum to this period is the 2015 release of the Jesus Christ EP. Only some of which is actually from this period. We'll explain. So there's 7 tracks on this EP. It's a hardcore barrel scraping, but you have the album version of Jesus Christ, the demo of Jesus Christ, an untitled acoustic instrumental circa 1968. It's a Chris Bell thing, kind of like a psych flamenco hybrid, but really just a sketch. Then an untitled electric instrumental circa 1974 Bell outtake.
That had a bit of a feel vibe to me. I don't know if you even remember hearing it at this point.
Yes, I do. And what I wrote was it could very easily have been transformed into a Big Star classic. And it clearly had the.
Yeah.
This could have been a great song.
Well, maybe you and I should finish it.
Yeah, hell yeah. Let's do it. Then comes Big Black Card, demo number 3, which is a 1974 Chilton outtake. Then the one song that I believe screams out to be airlifted from here into the playlist, Another Time, Another Place in You, which is a circa 1973 Chilton outtake with Richard Roseborough. This one's going to be on the playlist. It's a really good song.
I like this one. It's again another instrumental. And what's funny to me is this whole Jesus Christ EP was worth it for me just for this, because I'd heard this song on bootleg for a number of years, but because it's an instrumental, I was never fully convinced that it wasn't bootleggers just trying to pull something over. So there's no, even though it sounds like Big Star well enough, I was never convinced because there's no vocals, but here it is. Right. So it's nice to get that confirmation, literally decades later.
So this is kind of not applicable for rating, but if I had to be pressed, I would say 2 stars. This is not an essential release at all.
Yeah, I might go 2.5, but I hadn't really thought about it. Yeah, I mean, I think if you've listened to this far to this podcast, you're probably going to want to at least try to find a download of it or something, because it is long out of print.
Yeah. At this point, the group is faced with a very less than promising future, and so they do what anyone in their position would do, which is to split up, unless you're in the band called Anvil, in which case you don't split up under any circumstances. But they didn't really split up. They kind of, more accurately, they just kind of dissolved after a very chaotic, by all accounts, Memphis college radio appearance in 1975. During 1974 and 75, Chris Bell put together the recordings that were finally released in 1992 and called I Am the Cosmos. This is the only solo album by Chris Bell. We're not going to cover Chilton's solo stuff because that's a whole career. This is the only stuff that that Chris did during his lifetime. And so it's important to be grouped together with the Big Star legacy because he is Big Star.
I mean, what a revelation this record was, because this is another thing that had been bootlegged, but I had not had access to. We're talking, this is the pre-internet days where where I did a lot of tape trading back then, but I didn't know anybody who had this. I think it's one of those things that Peter Buck had, and stuff.
It's a truly phenomenal record. And what I found for me is my relationship with the record. Over time, I've come to like it more and more and more. It's just kind of grown on me more. Every time I listen to it, I feel like I like it more. That said, I don't think it's a perfect record. It's not as good as number one record, but it belongs. It's like the same level of quality as all the Big Star stuff. The title track alone is worth the price of admittance. It really is an amazing song that kind of has a vibe of a guy with girl trouble who realizes the insignificance of his problems in the face of the universe, and definitely heir apparent to the Big Star Chalice. You compare this to what Chilton's sensibilities were leaning toward at the time, and there is a very major difference. And so, to me, it's quite obvious there was no way these two could continue to cohabitate any longer.
I mean, I think they could have. It's just, I think that's part of the thing of made their partnership interesting, because they were coming from two different angles. But the song "I'm the Cosmos," it's such an incredible song. His voice is just drenched in sadness. It has that, incredible opening line. Every night I tell myself I am the cosmos, I am the wind, but that won't get you back again. Just like the extreme pain of a breakup with the other person still kind of hanging on a bit and won't let you fully go, and just the whole pain of loneliness. It's just really it's sometimes a hard song to both take and shake. It's just and it also just sounds incredible too.
It does
great
does.
Recording. Recorded 74 or 75.
It's a masterpiece. Really. It is. It really is.
I think it is his masterpiece. I might like one other song better, but we'll get to that.
I know the song.
This was, as you said earlier, this was the only song along with the song, I think you know what I'm talking about, You and Your Sister, and the B-side was the only thing solo record released in Chris's lifetime in 78, right before he passed.
And then, the record really doesn't relent. There's so many good songs, and it is kind of front loaded. In looking at it from 30,000 feet here, there's a barrage of looks like 5 songs that are just classics, one after the other. Before the the quality is just a tiny bit more variable. But Better Save Yourself is incredible. This one's got portent scrawled all over its being. The dude's at unbelievable odds with himself, and you can hear it very clearly in this song.
Yeah, I mean, he admits to attempting suicide twice. I mean, that's pretty... I mean, how often do you hear that sort of, confession in a song? That's really intense.
Yeah.
It does have a little bit of the, Chris became a born-again Christian, so it has a bit of that sort of stuff in here, too. You should give your love to Jesus. At one point, it even sounds like really angry. The line where you've been sitting on your own, I noticed like he sounds like kind of angry, which is also an intensity that's unique to this particular song.
Yeah, it's a little scary how the guy seems to seriously be engaged in a battle within himself. Speed of Sound is probably the most beautiful song on the entire record. Whether or not it's the best song, it's simply just gorgeous ballad with what sounds like marimba, I'm guessing, very tastefully deployed for maximum weepage factor. I love this song.
Yeah, I particularly like the line, "So you find him attractive, so what if he is?" But Getaway is the next song. That's a pretty hard rocker. That's Alex and Jody on this one. Which gives it kind of a...
Can we talk about the insane madness of those drum fills? I'm wondering if those are like double, triple, quadruple tracked just to make it sound like an onslaught like it does.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, to me too, it sort of makes it sound like just because Alex and Jody's, fills, it makes it sound like a kind of a, it does kind of sound like a number one record track.
And then of course, the turning point moment, You and Your Sister. This is it. This is the last one with Chilton. Such a heartbreaking song.
It really is. I mean, this is Chris's most beautiful song.
This is the end of the story. I got kind of lost. This I kind of dig. This is because it's like a singer-songwriter song that's gussied up as a rocker with sensitivo lyrics and a Who style vibe. So this I'm all about. Though I Know She Lies is a dead ringer for fucking Dan Fogelberg.
I thought of More Than Words.
Yeah, that too, man. It's no good.
Yeah,
I'm glad they jammed it in at the end.
It's the only track from '76 on the entire record. So he apparently was moving in some sort of different direction that I guess we'll never fully know, because this is pretty much put everything on here as far as recordings.
There's a few songs on disc 2 that are going to go on the playlist. Just want to mention those. Stay With Me with Keith Sykes. Don't know what that's about. Don't know who he is. Didn't bother reading anything about it. It's a good song. In My Darkest Hour with Nancy Bryan. Same shit, different toilet. Just to let you know. Oh, actually, sorry. Neither of these will be on the playlist.
Oh, phew. I'm relieved.
They're not on Spotify. So Long Baby, a.k.a. Clacton Rag, is a beautiful Fahey-esque solo acoustic eulogy for Bell. So this one is going to be airlifted straight onto the Hallowed playlist. But other than that, that's it for that. I give I Am the Cosmos 4.5 stars.
I'm going 4.
You're going 4? Yeah. It's understandable. So
the way you said that made me think I should feel some shame.
So if
sounds like you almost said undershameable.
No, not at all, man. No. What you rating it a 4 is very reasonable.
Thank you.
So, Chris Bell told a journalist named Barry Ballard back in 1975, in ye old days of 1975, if Big Star could overcome some personal difficulties, if we could get it together, I know we could do something very well. So Chilton, years later, with another journalist named Russell Hall, said, I don't know if Chris wanted to work together again or not. I don't remember that being the case. I mean, musicians get together to do things all the time on all sorts of bases. I personally had no intentions of ever getting back together in a band with anybody again, pretty much. So that's where he stood. And in 75, just as a testament to this whole thing and the finality of it, he comes out with My Rival, which is an EP. I'm sorry, he doesn't come out with that. He does that. He records that.
Yeah, that was a demo. That was a demo that he was doing.
And it was produced by Chris Bell.
Right, so this is kind of an interesting story. Like, everyone thought for decades that You and Your Sister was the last time that Alex and Chris collaborated in any way. So Chris doesn't actually appear. You can hear him talking once or twice on the recording, but he doesn't. He doesn't perform on it.
Here's what I'm going to say about this period here. I'm going to step back because Bart is actually palpably involved with this story because he broke this story. I wasn't even aware of it, so he's the one who hipped me to the whole thing to start with. What was it intended for?
I think it was purely as what you would call it, a demo where it was just to document his songs and pitch it to labels, which, again, seems sort of crazy considering how, if you think Third is fucked up, I mean, this stuff is pretty crazy.
It's really rough. It's really rough.
One thing I really like about this, though, is there's two versions of this song called She Might Look My Way, which has been described as Alex's like final Big Star-esque song. It's a really great song that he never officially released until this record. There was never an official Alex version that had come out.
What a great song.
Yeah, and on the second version, Chris does some really nice layering of Chilton's background vocals. So that's kind of like a nice ending in a way to their collaboration because of Chris's production work there on such a great Chilton song that calls back to when they were working together. So we didn't rate this or anything.
If you're Chilton fans and Big Star fans, you're gonna be familiar with a lot of these things. There's an early take of My Rival, which was later recut for Like Flies on Sherbert. All of the Time, which was recut for Singer Not the Song EP and the Box Bottom album. And then She Might Look My Way, you may know from Tommy, is it pronounced Hone?
I think so.
Tommy Hone's 1978 record, Losing You to Sleep, or Pricks, or Pre, or however they decided to pronounce that, and Windows Hotel, which was on a live album, Ocean Club 77. So, these tracks are available all over the place. These are not the ultimate iterations of them. The songs on this literally get better as they go. So I don't know if that was on purpose, but as a concept, it's certainly an interesting concept album EP. Hey, as a producer, Chris Bell makes a great songwriter. 2.5 stars.
Well, I did not know where you're rating this one, but sure, 2.5.
No, it was actually NA or 2.5 if pressed.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you. I'm glad you didn't hate it. I will go that far.
I didn't hate it.
So the Pricks thing is I think what we're going to talk about next, and that's interesting too, because that was also Chilton and Bell were involved in this project, but I don't know if there's any documentation of them actually working together in the studio. So the recordings for this go to as far as 76. It's like 75, 76, but the My Rival EP is still considered the last time they worked together. But it is confusing.
My Rival. Yeah. So here's from what I have gleaned, here's the story behind Pricks. And here, actually, I want to start by saying this. This is not canon, so it's NA. Okay, there's going to be no star rating accompanying this. But what I want to say very clearly, because I don't hear enough about this record, is that this is amazing, and every Big Star fan needs to own it. It's an incredible collection of songs that actually continues some of the magical, sparkling power pop vibe of number one record. It's definitely second wave power pop. So it's filtered and such through the natural organic fade of early 70s Beatle magic in the air. It is crucial shit.
Yeah.
So
I like it. Yeah.
that being said, so Pricks or Pre or what have you started off after Tommy Hone and John Tiven had done time in the last version of Big Star. So Chris Bell was roped in for production as well as guitar and backup vocals, and Rick Clark was added in on bass, and it was cut in Ardent, and that's what it is. And almost all the songs are just freaking amazing. So, what are your thoughts on Pricks? And the record's called Historics.
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, we should say it came out in 2002 initially, and then Hozak, which is a great label, put out an expanded version of it a couple of years ago. But yeah, I liked it. Yeah, I think I think I agree. It's a solid power pop record.
This is kind of like the last thing for a long time that we'll be talking about musically. Not long after the release of Sister Lovers, and we're talking 78, Chris Bell died in a car accident. So he apparently lost control of his car while driving alone and struck a lamppost. So a blood test did find that he wasn't drunk and no drugs were found on him other than a bottle of vitamins. So he either fell asleep or became distracted. But I'm going to say that, it's a real shame with him.
It totally is. But I think too, I've heard reports that there was no tire tracks or no skid marks found at the scene. So he very well could have fallen asleep, but there's also debate if he deliberately, ran into that telephone pole. That
takes balls. If that's how you choose to kill yourself, that takes balls.
I mean, it's still tragic no matter what, and we'll never know. We'll never know the answer. But definitely a sad.
There's gutsier ways to kill yourself, and that would be up there. So, this sort of there's like a 15-year period that follows, or 14 years, where there's a sort of the wilderness and reassessment years. So Chilton produces the Cramps and shits out a bunch of records about which I obviously couldn't give a rat's ass, including like Flies on Sherbert. Then he washes dishes in New Orleans for a while. Jody Stevens returns to Ardent as studio manager and makes countless appearances on other Big Star Acolytes records. He's apparently one of the nicest people on the planet, from what I've heard. So the 1-2 pop cultural punch was the Bangles covering September Girls on 1986's Different Light, which was a huge mega seller album, and the replacement song Alex Chilton off 1987's Pleased to Meet Me. They kind of experience a second wind, another era, because they become a cause to rally around. Basically a fundamental musical discovery just waiting in the wings for the imminently zealous. And Big Star returned in 1993 with a new lineup when John Auer and Ken Stringfellow from the Posies got together with Chilton and Jody Stevens. So they remained members of the Posies, which they had founded in 1986, who were also a great band. Hummel elected not to participate. I'm not quite sure what he's up to these days. Do you know?
Well, let's just say...
Oh, actually, I know he's passed away.
That was debatable in retrospect. Like, Andy Hummel said that he was never actually approached about it, so there may have been some...
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, there may have been some miscommunication, like they called him and he never responded for whatever reason, but... so that's only something I found out in recent years. But yeah, he basically just got out of the music business, as you were saying earlier, right, altogether. So
got out while the getting was good. So the resurrected band wound up making its debut at the 1993 University of Missouri Spring Music Festival, and a recording of the performance was issued as Columbia Live at Missouri University. There was, following that was tours of Europe and Japan, an appearance on The Tonight Show. You name it, you got it. So their first post-reunion studio recording was the song Hot Thing, which was recorded in the mid-90s for the tribute album Big Star, Small World. But as with their prior studio releases, the tribute album was plagued by issues as well. It was delayed for years because of the record company going under. These guys seriously couldn't even get a break for a second. So In 2005, they release a record called In Space. This record's a very interesting thing to talk about if you like records like Bob Dylan's Self-Portrait and things of that nature. Because the way I feel about it is, do you like In Space? Are you a fan, Bart?
No.
Okay, at all?
Well, I think, it's sort of admirable that at least, Jody, Ken, and John tried to make like a Big Star sounding album. Alex obviously had no interest in doing that, which, artistically, I guess you can't really blame him for that. It's just sort of weird that, he's the dominant singer and songwriter. Well, all the songs are credited jointly, but, he sings most of the songs, but none of them really sound like Big Star. So
right, which that was barely even his band. So I understand that of course he's going to explore different styles, but here's what I think about this record. This is ultimately how I feel, and then we can go into the songs themselves, or we don't even have to talk about all the songs. We could talk about a few of them that you may like, but. He's just kind of an asshole. He's an ornery dude. And Chilton knows that those 3 albums create an arc that is stunning in its perfection.
Well, he doesn't
think
that.
As an ass, I think it's maybe at a base level, he realizes that their arc tells a perfect story. So the prick that he is, he purposely fucked up the best and most economical 3-album run in band history. With this meaningless postscript, and the record itself, it sounds like a band practicing poorly and with no verve whatsoever to play Big Star in a shitty VH1 biopic.
Well, I think that would be a very Alex-like thing to do, to sabotage his legacy, but I don't know that that was really his intent. And I understand too of him trying different styles and doing different things. And in some ways, the Big Star reunion thing was almost a big surprise, just because Alex never seemed like he was really willing to fake it. But obviously, he in some ways he could. I guess the stuff they played live, he said he liked, but that was the only stuff he liked from Big Star. That's why they basically played the same set for 18 years. So the only songs he really liked were the ones they would do. But
nothing is going on the playlist. And look, I don't feel strong like it was like they're a terrible outfit. No, it was. I'm glad they got back together. There's only 3 songs I would even mention here, which is "Turn My Back on the Sun," a Ken Stringfellow song, Beach Boys Pastiche, probably my favorite song on the record, which is saying a lot for me as far as how I feel about this. But February's Quiet, Jody Stevens' song, is a good, solid song.
I like his other one too. I like Best Chance. I think that's a good one. I think both those songs sound like they could have been on Radio City.
Best Chance feels more like toothpaste commercial music.
Okay. I thought it was a pretty good song, but whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say probably the best song on the record, after extremely careful consideration, is Hung Up with Summer. Because it's got some really tasteful 12-string soloing on it, and it's got a cool vibe and long stretches where they're just kind of giving into the groove. But ultimately, who cares about this record? I give it 2 stars.
I also gave it 2 stars.
And then Rhino Records released that incredible box set, Keep an Eye in the Sky. Then on March 17, 2010, Alex Chilton had a heart attack and died, pronounced dead on arrival at Tulane Medical Center in New Orleans. That was pretty much the end, because 4 months after his death, Andy Hummel died of cancer on July 19th, 2010. The May 2010 tribute performance would stand as the group's final show as Big Star. It wasn't his last show with Aaron Stringfellow, but that was the last Big Star show. So since then, a really good documentary called Big Star, Nothing Can Hurt Me, came out in 2012. But look, these guys, as far as an arc, they exploded onto the scene like a Technicolor firework, shooting out sparks of every color of the rainbow. And then circumstance snuffed the light right out until the abyss was boring a hole straight back at them. Their top 3 records, number 3, and you're going to hate me for this, brother, Radio City. Number 2, Third Sister Lovers. Number 1 record. Their worst album, In Space.
Yeah, it's really tough to pick these records, and I think ultimately I have to go with my heart on this stuff. So mine's sort of the inverse. It's hard to even say it. I mean, because you have to pick something. I think I would go.
Say it.
I think I would go number 1 record 3, Third Sister Lovers 2, and Radio City 1. It's just a personal preference. I mean, is all it really is. I'm not even.
And then obviously In Space is the worst.
I would go with the weirdness for my. I'm sorry, that's awful.
Man, that album sucks. It does. So bad.
I hope we do this, dude, just so we can talk about those. It's funny how the similar arc there, though, right? I mean.
It is.
In Space easily. Yeah.
Well, look, man, I got to tell you, this was a big, like, if you were some guy off the street who had an unimpressive CV and had recommended, hey, let's do Big Star, there'd be no way, because they're a major band for me. They're a huge one, as I'm sure you can respect. I instantly said yes. I'm so glad I did. It's been a great episode and a very revealing trawl musically for me to experience on my own, and then very satisfying to bring it to the fucking dinner table here, brother.
Yeah, I love doing this, man. I'm so glad you wanted to do it. It's I'm honored to have to talk with you about this, and you did an amazing job. I don't know why you're not writing. I think you should. Your writing on this show is incredible. That's one of the things I've enjoyed just about listening is to hear you talking about all the history and all that stuff. You do a fantastic job. So. Yeah.
Thank you, Bart. I appreciate that.
Sorry, I want to compliment you some more, so I'm going to interrupt you. But I think you also have a great voice for this, too.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being on the show. And to all you soldiers of sound out there, keep tuned in because we have a lot of great shit rolling down the pike on Discography.